What's going on, Dodger fans? Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Incline Dodgers podcast. We are presented by Tick Pick and Fansided. We are about halfway through the season now, and your Los Angeles Dodgers have a pretty nice record of 51-31, coming off a nice sweep of the Colorado Rockies at Coors Field. They've got a nice 6-game lead over the San Diego Padres and a comfortable lead over the San Francisco Giants of 6.5 games. The Dodgers have been hot. They're 8-2 in their last 10, and I'm excited to be joined by Rowan Kavner, who covers Major League Baseball for Fox Sports MLB. Rowan, thank you for coming on. And there's so many things to talk about when it comes to the Dodgers, but kind of where do you want to get started?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the topic on everyone's mind watching that game is obviously Clayton Kershaw. And, I had something ready to go if it happened in Coors. You never really know against that team. 8 strikeouts might seem like a lot for Kershaw right now, but it certainly was within the realm of possibility. It sort of sounded like if there was any chance that, they weren't going to push him. And obviously to be able to get 3,000 at home, that was, I think, something that probably would have meant a little bit more. So that opportunity will be there now next week. He's again providing innings that they need, that they probably couldn't have ever predicted that they would need from him at this point of the year, especially. And it may not be the same stuff that we were used to seeing in years past, but the guy is still getting it done. And despite everything, despite the top 3 not really hitting the way that you'd expect, and then obviously Ohtani's getting hot now. Despite the starting pitching, despite all of this. You mentioned the record. You mentioned what they've been doing. Dodgers got to feel pretty good about where they're at right now.
Yeah, Clayton Kershaw is out pitching the expectations I had for him, and especially in Coors Field today, it was smooth sailing. He went 6 innings, only allowed 2 hits. Those were the only 2 hits the Colorado Rockies got all day today. There was no life on offense for them. The bullpen really held it down between Yates, Kopech, and Tanner Scott for his 17th save. And then Kershaw gave up just 1 run on a solo home run, 5 strikeouts, and he's lowered his ERA now down to a 3.03 ERA, and he's 4-0. So like I just said a second ago, really exceeding my expectations. And for a guy trying to help the Dodgers win a World Series, he's got to feel pretty good about himself right now, proving that he's been a major contributor up to this point in the first half for the Dodgers season.
Yeah, and I think, I think he's just happy to be out there. I think it's hard for him, obviously, to see that March last year. And you could tell at that championship parade, like, obviously he wasn't a part of that postseason run, but like that meant a lot to him. And for him to kind of scream, Dodger for life, and he was choked up and he was emotional, like it means something to still be out there. He still feels like he has something to give. And obviously the underlying stuff, he's not striking out the guys that you'd expect necessarily. The whiff rate isn't there. But then you look up, and as you mentioned, he's a 3.03 ERA. He finds a way to get it done. He takes advantage when teams want to, get him early with, try to get out on that fastball, and it looks, so hittable. And then you look up, and he's given up like 1 or 2 runs again, and he just sort of figures it out. There's been times where the command wasn't where he wants to be. The curveball wasn't where he wants to be. The slider wasn't where it wants to be. But he usually figures out what's kind of wrong, and he finds a way to sort of course correct and work his way through a game. And right now the Dodgers just need the innings. If he can give you, sure, you'll definitely take 1 run in 6 innings. But, if he can give you 3 runs in 5, 3 runs in 6, a couple quality starts, like this is all really, really helpful just to kind of keep the ship afloat. And then once you get to October, it'll be interesting to see what they want to do. And I think if you're the Dodgers, you hope a lot of your guys are back by then.
Yeah, so in all likelihood, Kershaw's next start will be at home. I think this was kind of the dream as well for him to get that 3,000th career strikeout at home at Dodger Stadium. So it'll be against the Chicago White Sox. The question will be, will Miguel Vargas be that 3,000th career strikeout? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. I think, hey, he's had a decent year. At least he was. I didn't look like the last week or so, but he's had a pretty decent year in Chicago. I hope good things for him because, it just never really seemed to work out or find his spot in LA. So if that's his claim to fame, I'm sure Dodgers fans will remember him for an even longer time. Yeah.
It'll be a funny storyline if that's the case. So not so much today, but the first 2 games and all month of June, for that matter, Max Muncy has had a major resurgence for the Dodgers. The guy has been on fire. I mean, 2 grand slams in the last week span. He had a big one last night in Coors Field to put the Dodgers at that point. I think it was a 7-1 game. And then I had some stats coming into today, so they're a game behind. But in June, Max Muncy was hitting 328 with a 459 on base percentage, 1,100 OPS, 6 home runs, 20 RBIs, and a 204 weighted run created plus, which was top 5 in the National League. We're looking at Max Muncy right now in kind of a rhythm that we would see from years past Max Muncy. Clearly, the eyewear has been a difference maker. So I want to get your thoughts kind of on what you've seen from Max Muncy, especially over the last month plus.
Yeah, this is a guy that, like, when he's not going right, there's a lot of tinkering, and he will admit that first month was a grind for him. And I think maybe, seeing the eye doctor, getting some advice from Kike Hernandez there, like, maybe it's just kind of grasping at straws, but it is really hard to argue that that doesn't have something to do with it. You look at pre-eyeglasses, and I looked this up as well. No home runs. That was obviously the biggest thing, and that was April 30th that he started putting them on. He had a 531 OPS. So you go April 26th, he had a 513 OPS. May 26th, 653. June 26th, 829. He has been the best offensive third baseman in baseball since he put the glasses on. And I think when you watch that first month, you figure, okay, just anything you can get out of him offensively, just anything to turn it around. To see this level of outbursts is pretty much as good as we've seen him offensively as a Dodger, really, in this last couple months. It's been remarkable. It's a remarkable turnaround. It comes at a really important time where, as I mentioned, Mookie and Freddie are kind of grinding through it. So you need to find that offensive production somewhere. You're getting it from Muncy. Will Smith has been the best non-Cal Raleigh catcher in baseball, has been really consistent for them. That's been important. And then obviously Andy Pages has given them way more than they could have ever bargained for. But yeah, I mean, what you're getting from Muncy right now, huge. And I think it's probably, if you're the Dodgers front office, it's sort of the Michael Conforto argument where you think just there's time, you're winning games. Let's buy as much time of it as we can because we think there's still sort of something there. And obviously the power for Muncy is going to be something you're kind of pointing to, but really everything, the plate discipline is back from what you've seen before. I think he has a higher walk rate than strikeout rate since he started wearing the glasses as well. So the guy's just clicking. So yeah, huge of that. If you're getting that version of Max, and I'm sure there's going to be some ups and downs and things like that, but what you've seen these last couple months has been, again, one of, if not the best offensive third baseman in baseball.
Absolutely. And you just mentioned, yeah, his walk rate has been off the charts. And you look at his chase percentage, it's one of the best right now in baseball. He's not swinging outside the zone, kind of like what he was doing in that first month of the season. There were a lot of sliders and outside fastballs that you just saw Muncy whiffing at. And his plate discipline has just been pretty much on point the last 2 months or so since really coming into that zone. And he's hitting the ball hard. He's barreling up on it. He's got great batting run value. The only thing that we kind of knock him is his defense. But when he's slugging like this, it's really hard to complain about Max Muncy right now. And his OPS has gone up to a point this season at 829, where that exceeds his MLB career averages. So he's just playing at a great level. If he didn't have that first month, we'd probably be talking about Max Muncy as an all-star candidate. But because those stats weighed him down, I don't know if he's going to get there. But speaking of all-stars, most certainly there's someone we have to talk about who I think is getting really close in the thick of it now for being potentially in that final 6 as an all-star starter. And we're looking at the outfield with Andy Pages, who's just having a true breakout season for the Los Angeles Dodgers. His stats up to this point, he's hitting 293, which is just insane. He's got 16 home runs, 54 RBIs. So since we're at the halfway point, if you were to double his numbers, he's basically at a 32 home run, 108 RBI pace, and he's got an 836 OPS. And I'll get into the clutch stats in a second. But yeah, back to you, Rowan, just kind of how important Andy Pages has been for the Dodgers. He had that big play to end the game this afternoon.
By the way, what were they doing? Oh my gosh, that is just a comedy of errors. What a disaster!
It's the Rockies.
Yeah, dude, that was. Anyway, yeah, to talk about Andy, I mean, it's again remarkable, and it wasn't maybe to the level of Muncy early on, but I think those first couple weeks of the season, he just looked sort of out of sorts. And it's like, what does this team do in center field? Especially going back on the ball. He was just, it was tough. He was having some struggles. I did not see this kind of a rebound coming. It's been remarkable. And you look at the all around value he's providing. He's been incredible in center field. Obviously his arm is insane. I'm not sure anyone's going to be testing him at all in the second half of the season. But those offensive numbers too are incredible. I think the fact that he's gotten his strikeout rate down to around 18%, I thought that was going to be something that you'd see kind of hover around 25 to 30 maybe, because it's a guy that does chase a lot. He doesn't walk a lot, and it's at 18%. And if he's going to keep it at that level with the ability that he has to at least make contact with the ball, to power away when he gets his opportunities, the all-around value he's providing is remarkable. Now, the hard part, and it may not matter because he's close there in that all-star voting. There are a lot of good National League outfielders. PCA's having at least was on pace for kind of an MVP type season. Obviously, Kyle Tucker, Corbin Carroll is banged up. Fernando Tatis, James Wood. I mean, there's a lot of players right now that are having really, really good seasons, but Pages is right there up there with him. And yeah, what a turnaround. I don't think anyone could have seen this level of play coming.
And it's at a really good time too, with Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman kind of collectively slumping. We usually do a player of the month poll, and I think it's a 2-horse race right now between Max Muncy and Andy Pages. Pages is hitting 359 this season with runners in scoring position. Will Smith's still at the top of the leaderboard for all of Major League Baseball. He's hitting 419, but Andy Pages has been the second most clutch Dodger with that 359 batting average, 39 runs batted in, 873 OPS. The guy just seems to have a slow pulse where the big moments don't get to him. And we really saw him shine in that San Diego Padres series. And he had some big hits again in this Coors Field Rocky series. Just been really impressed with Andy Pages, and he's just truly been valuable, whether it's with the bat or the defense. So
yeah. Third and more on the team. He's ahead of Betts and Freeman. He's providing more value as of this moment than Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. It's remarkable what he's been able to accomplish here. And yeah, I mean, I think you could look at some offensive numbers from some other outfielders, and if you're strictly talking about that, you can make the case for them certainly. But his defense in center field, I think, has been the most impressive thing to me, and the thing that I thought I wasn't totally sure about. Obviously, he had the arm, but just when you look at the all-around value that he's able to provide out there, what a turnaround.
No doubt about it. Appreciate people tuning into the live stream. Hit that like button. You can drop some questions for me or Rowan as well. We're more than happy to take on any questions you guys have. Michael Conforto had a couple home runs in this series. He boosted his total home run total up from 4 to 6 now. Anything to make of it, or is it just kind of a beneficiary of being in Coors Field against some awful Rockies pitching?
Yeah, I don't put too much stock in terms of production in Colorado, but I think one thing it can do is maybe there's a confidence boost that comes from seeing that. Maybe it does lead to something, catching a little bit of fire. I think for a long time there, those first couple months of the season, he was hitting the ball hard. There were some issues with bat path stuff that they were trying to correct, but he was still hitting the ball hard. It just wasn't yielding much production. I think his expected batting average is closer to 240, 250. If he's slugging 400, 450, you're probably not thinking it's as bad as it is. But yeah, it's been really, really rough in this first half so far. He's obviously still taking his walks. He had a couple nice plays defensively. You're hoping he can kind of just build on sort of something there. And the Dodgers are going to run this out. I mean, obviously they'll have a decision to make here in a month if they want to go do something at the deadline to address it. But he has a few weeks to be able to kind of build on this. And they wouldn't have given him as much money as they did, even if it is just for 1 year, if they didn't want to see this thing through. And I'm sure there's some stuff they can cling on to on the underlying numbers, which again aren't as bad as the actual production, and say there might be something here still. But yeah, he's got to go do it, and the results have to come, and he has 3 more weeks to try to build on this.
We've got some mini breaking news. It's not a big story, but Bob Nightingale just tweeted out the NL All-Star finalist, and both Teoscar Hernandez and Andy Pages made the final 6. Corbin Carroll and Fernando Tatis Jr. appear to have been squeezed out. You've got Mookie Betts at shortstop in second place behind Lindor. Tommy Edman in second place for second base behind Marte. Max Muncy climbed up to number 2 for third base behind Machado. And Shohei Ohtani outright won the designated hitter spot. And then Will Smith, Freddie Freeman leading the way for their respective positions as well. So a ton of Dodgers potentially getting an opportunity to go to Atlanta.
Yeah, not a surprise there. I mean, yeah, I figured that, you know, the fanfare would come out and be able to vote most of these guys in. And a lot of them are definitely deserving. I know it's been obviously a tough stretch lately for Freeman in June. It's been really rough in June, but before that this was, you know, career year type numbers. You kind of wonder, you know, injury wise, what's kind of maybe going on under the hood there. He's been trying to sort of figure it out with his swing. But yeah, I mean, the votes are out, and a lot of these guys are absolutely deserving. You know, we can talk about pretty much anyone. I don't know which one you even want to start with here, but we can talk about any one of these guys if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I did want to get into Freddie Freeman briefly because obviously he has been slumping in the month of June, had an RBI base hit earlier this afternoon, but his batting average has gone down to 309, which, I mean, at the end of the day, a 309 batting average is still Hall of Fame batting average numbers, 880 OPS. The power has definitely dropped, only the 9 home runs over his last 7 games, hitting 107. But to kind of focus in on June real quick, hitting 182 entering today in the month of June, 485 OPS, looks like 0 home runs. So I don't know if it's just a bad month or some injuries have caught up to him or a little bit of fatigue. But at the end of the day, it's just 1 month. It's not a huge sample size. And I'm not too concerned about Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, and I think you look at a lot of the, you know, hard hit rate through the year, and you look at how good. I mean, we were talking about he's having the best season he's ever had when you're you know, entering this month. So I think to see it plummet the way that it has, and the fact that the Dodgers have gone on this run where they've looked as good as they have really all season since that first week, with him not playing well, with Mookie not playing well, the two of them combined have 1 home run in June, and they're just, you know, storming through a really tough part of their schedule that has now finally eased up. But yeah, I think when you see it, how good he was in April and May, and to see how steep a decline it was in June. And I know he had a little bit of a quad thing at the beginning of the month. You just kind of wonder, I think you have to point to health. He was obviously, you know, gritting through the ankle that early on in the season. You have the quad that comes up. And when you see the power numbers start to dip, you got to wonder if maybe there's just some lower half kind of stuff going on. He won't ever talk about that or blame that. You've seen him take BP out on the field. That's kind of one way you can tell if he knows if he's going right or not. If you see him out on the field taking batting practice, he's probably searching a little bit. He's been doing that a lot more. He's searching for it. He tends to figure it out, I imagine. As long as nothing is too physically compromising, he will get back on track at some point.
Have you observed if Mookie Betts has been kind of doing that approach where he's taking extra at bats? Because to me, just hearing some of the pregame notes and listening to broadcasts, it seems like for Betts, it continues to be an emphasis on fielding drills and kind of helping his teammates out, whether it's Hae-Sung Kim or working on drills himself. It just seems like Mookie Betts has kind of shifted his focus on perfecting his defensive mechanics at the shortstop position.
Yeah, it's tough, man. And you ask him kind of that thing, because I think it's the easiest thing to point to and just say, look, are you doing too much at shortstop? Is this just too taxing to kind of, you know, figure out? And he would say, well, I did this last year and my numbers were great offensively when I did this last year. So, and he's more confident this year defensively at shortstop than he was last year. So I think it's hard to sort of figure out. He's still, you know, grinding offensively. Yes, you're going to see him hours before the game, every game, still taking grounders, still doing all this stuff. You do. I mean, it's just the easiest thing to point to, because it's hard to just say, well, what's going on with your swing? It's how you just haven't seen, you know, an entire kind of half a season with these numbers. And granted, you can live with these numbers a little bit more when it's coming from a shortstop, when you're a slightly above league average hitting shortstop than you are as a corner outfielder. But you're just not used to seeing this. You know, obviously what Mookie can be, the hard hit rate, the power numbers. When you're talking about, you know, a slugging percentage under 400, I think that's kind of the thing that really sort of stands out the most. He's this guy, you know, he's never been a huge bat speed guy, and it takes kind of all of his force with his frame to be able to get a ball out. But the hard hit rate, it's down. The swing speed is a little bit down. So can he figure it out? Probably. But yeah, I mean, I think when you're talking about a guy that size, it's a little bit concerning that you've gone this long into the season and it's still just not quite there yet. But man, on the other side of that, he has been so much better, I think, defensively than anyone could have sort of predicted in this. Not just serviceable, but one of the better defensive shortstops in baseball. So there's a trade-off. Would you make that trade-off? I don't know. I mean, is there any guarantee that if you were playing in right field right now that he'd be an 850 OPS guy? I don't know about that. So it's hard to really tell. And obviously it's going to be a grind until he figures it out.
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I don't think we need Mookie Betts to play shortstop to have a successful season. You've got Edman, you've got Kim. I would prefer if Betts was playing a position and maybe it's not correlated. I do think it's correlated, but I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean,
it's the easiest thing to point. It's hard to just say, well, what else would happen, And obviously he lost the weight early on in the year with the illness, but he put that weight back on. Yep. So it's hard. It's hard to figure out. I'm sure if he knew, he would try to answer that. But yeah, I totally get that. I think last year, especially, it was, confusing why he was playing where he was. And clearly he likes playing the infield. But I totally understand anyone who says, just put that guy in the outfield. He's a multi-Gold Glove winner out there. So yeah, I get it.
Or even second base, if it means a little of his bat comes back. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's hard for me to accept having someone hitting 727 being in your second spot in the batting order, especially with how deep and prolific this Dodgers lineup is. I would like to see that OPS start to tick up. So hopefully in July, maybe we'll see some positive progression. But kind of where that's kind of tying everything together, and this goes to Shohei Ohtani now. I think they're going to do it. It makes a lot of sense to do it. If Shohei Ohtani is starting at home at Dodger Stadium, I don't think you can have him hitting leadoff because I just don't think it naturally makes sense for him to go from pitching on the mound to immediately hitting. He's a freak. He's a unicorn, but I just don't think from like a recovery standpoint, like there's enough time for his body to get ready to go from throwing potentially 100 miles per hour to now hitting 2 minutes later.
Yeah, no, I think that's also totally fair, totally accurate. I think that first time you saw it, it was just like, whoa, he's not even going back to the dugout. This is incredible. I think even like Dave Roberts said he was fanboying, just kind of like watching the routine. But then, yeah, I mean, then he has to do it. And I think, it's, you don't want to say he can't do anything, but it definitely feels like the best decision is to give him at least one full minute to breathe for a second, to sit down for a second, to grab a cup of water without having to run and put on his shin guard and elbow guards and go run up to the plate. So I'm with you. Whether it's, batting third or fourth or second or whatever you want to do. Probably not second because then he's still in the on-deck circle. But I think if you hit him third on games that he starts, I think that would totally make a lot of sense. So we'll see if they end up going that route. Obviously, it hasn't hurt them yet. But yeah, I think if you're trying to optimize this, I think that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, to answer the question, since I know a number of people will probably think the same thing, but for Justin Yamas, I mean, if the Dodgers are facing a left-handed starter, then I think it makes sense to go with either a Tommy Edman at leadoff or maybe Andy Pages. If it's a right-handed starter, then I guess you could just do the easy thing and default to Mookie Betts, move him to leadoff, and then have Freddie maybe second and Ohtani third. I think that's naturally what they would probably do for now, at least.
Yeah, I think either of those make sense. I think you could, there's a world where you could put Freddie at first. I know that would be kind of crazy, maybe just to see a guy, you're not used to seeing something like that. But, I think you could do a variety of different things. Obviously, Mookie not playing the way that you expect kind of complicates it a little bit because there's not really that traditional leadoff hitter. I think Edman is a more traditional kind of speed threat, quick guy in that spot and hits enough that he could probably handle it. So a couple of different options. Again, it hasn't really hurt them. And I do think it's just interesting that, I think for a long portion of this season through April, through May, I have to do these power rankings, for Fox Sports. And I just never felt like this team like really got going ever. Like it just felt like they're just kind of in cruise control a little bit. And then Betts isn't hitting, Freeman isn't hitting, and suddenly, it's the hardest part of the schedule, and they're going. You get that the 2 series against the Padres, you get the series against the Giants, and they've looked as good as they have, all season. So none of these things are going to be super detrimental. I think whatever decision you make, I think they'd be okay with it. I don't think it's hurting them, obviously, in the standings, but yeah, it's something to think about.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the Dodgers know they just have the talent, they have the aura that for that matter, and they can kind of pull like a Kansas City Chiefs where they can sleepwalk through a lot of the season, and even when they aren't playing their best, they still manage to have the best record right now in the National League. They were the first in the NL to get to 50 wins, and they're kind of just in a good spot right now. Their schedule has gotten a lot lighter. They just took care of business against the Giants and the Padres for 2 series. Now they've got the Royals, who are more of a up-and-coming team, but they're not by any means super scary in my opinion, and they just swept the Rockies. They had to take care of the Nationals. That wasn't too much of an issue either. So it was a tough month of June schedule-wise, but it's going to soften up for the Dodgers for a little bit, and we're happy. You got Tyler Glass now rehabbing. He threw a couple innings in Oklahoma City the other day. Sounds like he's got 2 or maybe 3 more rehab appearances, and then he'll be back. I'm not really quite sure what to make of where we're at with Blake Snell. It sounded like he was close, but then not so close. So is he more like around the deadline type of return?
I think that's probably right. A little bit after the start of the second half. Until you start seeing him, because obviously he's going to need rehab and to build back up quite a bit. He wouldn't be throwing bullpens, I don't think, if it wasn't like a little bit better. I think he's on the right road to kind of recovery. I don't know what to make of the Glasnow thing, and I think it was just kind of, it's hard to have any real kind of prediction on what you're going to get from him with that second half, and you saw at the beginning of this year where he can look just so good in certain stints, and then it can just kind of unravel, and then it's the shoulder, but it's not really the shoulder, but it's the body. But it's just really hard to kind of know what you're going to get. And so it's definitely good to see him kind of on the comeback trail. It looks like he is probably the next guy, in line to come back. You just hope he can kind of figure it out, physically and mentally to be able to stick through this.
Whether it was manufactured or just pure injuries, the timing for Tyler Glasnow could not be more perfect, because the Dodgers proved they can survive a first half essentially without him. And for a guy like Tyler Glasnow, the track record speaks for itself. He can really only manage to pitch 1 half in baseball. So the timing works out where we got him for the second half, and I think he can hold it together to stay healthy for a few months and then hopefully pitch in October. So I know it's a very expensive price tag to maybe have to pay a guy for half a season every year for the rest of his career. But if they can get one good playoff run out of Tyler Glasnow, then to me it's worth it. Because like last year, for example, with Yoshinobu Yamamoto, he didn't pitch a whole lot during the regular season. He missed close to 3 months with the injuries, but he dominated in October, and it was a big $300 million contract, but they got a World Series, and I think everyone would agree it's ultimately worth it.
Yeah, if you play your best in October, nothing else really matters. And you saw that with Yamamoto. Rarely is anyone talking about, when you look back at the season, everyone says, okay, well, it was the New York start where it turned all around, and that was the thing. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, but he also then missed 3 months. It doesn't matter because he picked it up. He was then at his best when they needed him most. If that's the trajectory now for Tyler Glasnow, people will be able to live with the fact that he didn't really do anything for you in the first half of the season. And you're right, though. It's like, it's kind of hard to know with any certainty just how severe some of these injuries are when you know that this team knows that they just need to get through this portion of the schedule. And I thought it was a dangerous proposition. I would say this year, way more than past years, it sort of felt like they were treating this section with the entire 162, or at least up until kind of August, September, as just sort of their buildup. And I think it's hard to just, as talented as a team can be, to say, okay, now it's time to turn on. Everyone's back. Let's go. It's not always that easy to just kick it into gear. And I thought that was going to be dangerous. And you saw this team kind of playing 500 ball for a long time. And then they turned it on, and they turned it on huge when they needed to against division opponents. You mentioned the advantage they have now. So I'm wrong there, because they've done it without a lot of these guys that they're going to need, for October. And I think ideally a lot of them will be really fresh by that point. You mentioned Snell. I think it's just so huge that he's back. I don't know exactly where he's at physically. But I think right now they're expecting him to be still a weapon by August, September. And if that's the case, this is still the team you don't want to see for the rest of the league.
We'll talk some trade deadline rumors in a couple of minutes, but I did see someone asking about Hae-Sung Kim in the chat about why he isn't playing. I mean, I have to agree. I was a little frustrated. He didn't really get any meaningful at bats at all in this Coors Field series. But I mean, ultimately it worked out because Michael Conforto had a big series. So I suppose the Dodgers were right on this one. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be harder and harder for a guy like Kim to find that rhythm if he's on the bench a lot.
Yeah, it's really hard. And it's a guy that can obviously, hit right. We've seen that a lot from him. He can hit left too. He hasn't gotten a lot of opportunities, but when he did, he's hit those guys too. So when he gets his chances, he performs. But again, if you're the Dodgers right now and you're holding on to Michael Conforto, you have about a month left to see, is this guy going to be able to turn it around? And so I think obviously they want that to happen. Even if it's maybe not the most optimal lineup at this point, and you can still run that out and sweep the Rockies, and it's not that big of a deal. If we were sitting here in September in a division race, I think you'd probably see more of Kim, but they have the benefit now of just sort of running this out. I mean, I would also love to see Kim get more opportunities. I did not expect him to be able to hit this well. I think you saw, the infield defense was something that should, be able to help. I thought he'd hit for contact, but I didn't expect it to be like this. And it's really hard. I mean, you saw Dalton Rushing kind of go through it early on with his career. When you're a young guy or a guy adjusting to the big leagues for the first time and only getting sparing playing time, it is really, really tough to find any sort of a rhythm. Kim has done that. I just think they're going to give Conforto every opportunity. And if Conforto doesn't turn it around in the next 3 weeks, you'll probably see a lot more of Kim come the second half.
I hope so. We continue to pound the table. We want more Kim in the lineup. We think he's he's a real animal out there. He puts the ball in play. He's a speed demon, a scrappy defender. We love that guy. So here's why I don't think the Dodgers are going to trade for a starting pitcher. And then I'll do some name dropping for names they're kind of looking at, per like Bob Nightingale and Passan. But Emmett Sheehan, we saw a little taste of Emmett Sheehan, and then they sent him down to AAA. And I think Emmett Sheehan took that personally, because in his most recent, his one Oklahoma City, his most recent, because he had some rehab outings, but his most recent, he spun 6 perfect innings. He had 13 strikeouts. I think he had 21 swings and misses. Again, 6 perfect innings. So this is a guy that clearly is ready for the big stage. He should be at the show level right now. He's not eligible to come back till I think July 7th or July 4th, one of those days, unless there's an injury, then he can come up sooner. But I think Emmett Sheehan has the makeup, clearly the pitch mix and the stuff to be a real contributor for the Dodgers in this rotation this season. Now, it's always a little bit of a question mark when someone's coming off Tommy John and how their mechanics are going to look. But so far from what we've seen from Sheehan, he looks right.
Yeah, he does. And I think the biggest thing in seeing him, in the clubhouse, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was now, he just looks bigger. And he's just more built than he was, I think, before going down. He didn't really go into much detail with that when I asked him about it. But he looks physically more of an intimidating presence, I think, now, and as he's kind of grown and had an entire year to kind of just focus solely on physically building his body back. We heard a lot about, you're going to get Sheehan back probably at some point, in the second half or whatever. Yeah, okay, but he's coming off Tommy John. Yeah, you're right. He looks the part. I don't know what the role will be if Snell does come back and Glasnow does come back. But right now, as you mentioned, they need innings, they need arms. that's what kind of Kershaw is feeling. I don't think anyone could have predicted. We're sitting here on June 26th, and Dustin May is kind of closing in on the high innings count. I know it's still Yamamoto, but he's not that far behind. I don't think anyone could have kind of predicted that. So I'm curious what his role will be. Robleski's kind of interesting as a relief guy. When you're pumping 98, 99 from the left side, I think, that's kind of a little bit intriguing. Not necessarily as a starter, but I'm curious what his role will be as we go on. I mean, Ben Kasparias, I know it's been a little rougher in the last kind of week or two, but what a huge addition, not addition, but, to see his role increase to kind of be a guy that can kind of bounce around has just been so huge for this team. I know he's not going to win NL Rookie of the Year, but I think he should at least get kind of some consideration in terms of the top NL rookies that you've seen so far. But yeah, I mean, I think they have a lot of interesting guys from the left side out of the bullpen. But when Kasparias is kind of the most reliable righty reliever, that's a bit of a problem. And I think you expect kind of Yates, if he can stay healthy, to be able to kind of pick it up, from there. And we'll see on Treinen, but I do expect them to get some bullpen help somewhere.
I'm glad you brought up Robleski, because I honestly had forgotten about him, because the Dodgers pitching is just coming to life. We're getting a lot of our arms back, but even Robleski has been a guy that's really shown major leaps and improvements. He just had a career strikeout high of 7 against the Rockies a couple days ago, coming in relief. And this is a guy, in my opinion, that they need to continue to ride as long as they have the roster flexibility, because he continues to look better and better with every outing. And when you're throwing between 98 to 100 miles per hour as a left-handed starter / reliever, then you most certainly have my attention. It's not very often you have guys that are left-handed and can throw 100 miles per hour. So this is definitely a very valuable jewel that the Dodgers have right now. He's not even really a prospect anymore at this point. I would consider him now a major league player. And so this kind of just gets it really interesting with the amount of depth that they're kind of collecting. And I know injuries will happen, and probably by the time the postseason's near, we'll be down to 3 or 4 starters again, because that's just the Dodgers way. But despite Dustin May being available this season, there's certainly a possibility that he could get squeezed out of the rotation. I don't think Tony Gonsolin is coming back this season. I just don't have confidence in him. So those are the two kind of on the outside looking in my opinion. But I would love to see, and Landon Knox, the other one, I kind of don't know what his future with the Dodgers will be, other than maybe a spot start here and there. But to get to the point, I love Robleski. I think Dodger fans need to continue to just kind of watch this guy grow and develop.
Yeah, and I think when you look at what they have from the left side, we talked about Robleski, and I obviously you want Tanner Scott to kind of get right, and he's looked a lot better as of late. He had obviously that rough little spell, and I think when you're a closer or reliever at all, you have 2 or 3 rough outings, and your season total just looks completely shot. But I think as long as he can kind of keep that velo like 96, 97, and he knows where it's going, that's obviously encouraging. You've seen kind of some up and down from Banda, but I think to have Vesia, Banda, Robleski, Tanner Scott, there's a lot of guys they can throw from the left side, and now it's just who's going to be available and right from the right side. And I think Dreyer. Yeah, how can I? Yeah, of course. I think who was roommates in the minor leagues with Kasparias. So it's interesting to see them be able to kind of come up and both be really, really huge parts of this team that I don't think anyone could have really predicted. And if you talk to them, you look at all the pieces that this team's added in the offseason, and your mind naturally goes, well, where am I going to kind of fit? And it tends to work out. I had people ask me what are they going to do about this rotation? There's just way too many people. How are they going to figure this out? And it's going to work out. No one is going to, it just works out this way. That we were sitting here now, did I think we're going to be sitting here talking about they're going to need more starting pitching at the deadline? I don't think I would have thought that. I don't think Andrew Friedman or Brandon Combs would have thought that. It's definitely a possibility, though. It'll be interesting to see how they decide to build up Ohtani, and the fact that you're still kind of seeing these 1-inning spurts and how slowly this kind of builds up for October. I'm interested to see, kind of what obviously that looks like. But yeah, if one of these guys, and you mentioned Sheehan and Knack, if kind of one of those guys can take a big leap, that's going to be huge just to be able to eat innings and not have to rush, Glasnow or Snell back and be able to kind of go on whatever timeline they want. And I think if you're Snell too, like, we haven't even mentioned Roki Sasaki, who at least is like throwing again, but I'm considering that the 2025 season kind of a wash at this point. I'm not really predicting anything, especially when you start looking at, the October rotation or anything like that. So, but yeah, I think if you're Snell, you sign that big deal, you don't want to be sitting this out. If you're healthy and able to go, again, it's hard to know sometimes how severe these injuries are when you have a team that's wanting everyone just to be, as healthy and as careful as possible. But I think if you're him, you want to be able to kind of say, I deserve this, contract. I want to start on the right foot. So I expect him to be back in the second half. And that's, obviously a huge piece if you can get a Cy Young winner there.
Absolutely. So Bob Nightingale continues to hammer home the fact that the Dodgers have Sandy Alcantara near the top of their wish list, and they continue to check in on his availability and try to get a trade worked out potentially before the deadline. I'm sure a number of teams are going to be in on Alcantara. I'm just selling it. I just don't think the Dodgers are going to make this trade. We just talked about the number of starting pitching options they have, and I don't think they want to part ways with some of their top prospects for a guy that's ultimately at the end of the day been underperforming.
Yeah, I don't kind of blame you. I'm just, you mentioned kind of the lack of kind of people to talk about. I think the fact that we're talking about Sandy Alcantara as poorly as he pitched through most of the first half, I know it's been better lately, and some of the underlying stuff was a little more encouraging, but I just think you're sitting here on June 26th, and it is really hard to know what teams are going to be selling. And the teams that are selling, are for sure selling, don't have a whole lot to offer. And so I think Alcantara is kind of the prize of that. And obviously it's a guy with a track record of a ton of success. A month from now, we're probably going to be talking about a lot more teams. And there's a lot of teams kind of sitting there hovering close to 500 that are really going to be the ones that could impact the deadline. I look at Arizona, could Gallen or Merrill Kelly end up kind of being part of this? Does Baltimore throw in the towel? Does Zach Eflin get to be, someone that teams can kind of get into? Does Kansas City totally tank and then Seth Lugo becomes a possibility? Yeah. Like, there's a lot of guys who have teams that are sort of in the mix now start to really plummet and decide we're going to blow this thing up and get what we can. We're not going to be talking quite as much as about Sandy. Now, if that doesn't happen, and Alcantara is the clear number one, as you mentioned, I don't know that it's worth the amount of prospect capital that you're giving up for a guy who might not be starting games for you in October. So that's kind of what you're sort of weighing back and forth. Now, if Alcantara is the fact that, he can eat up a ton of innings, that's to get you there. That's important. But I just think he's going to go for probably a lot, just seeing what the prices for pitching have been at recent deadlines.
A bullpen name that Nightingale linked us to, he didn't really confirm if it was someone the Dodgers were actually going after. It was more along the lines of a name he could see us going after. But I'm on board. I think Pete Fairbanks out of the bullpen, Tampa Bay Rays reliever, he'd be a really nice add. He's having a good season. He has a good season just about every year. 2.08 ERA this season as a reliever. Why not add another 2020 Rays pitcher? I guess he can be buddies with Snell and Glasnow.
That's right. Yeah. The pipeline continues, right? I mean, that would be a huge get, obviously. And the Rays are kind of interesting in that they're really, really good. Like, they probably should just keep the guys who are really good and try to go win something. But you just see this happen from them so often that they have a guy come up and they get ahead of it and they still are able to perform. It's kind of remarkable. But yeah, that's a guy to watch. But you look at kind of these teams that are in sort of similar boats. I think, if the Twins really start to tank, would Duran become, available? Would Felix Bautista from the Orioles become available? There's some big names that if these teams they sort of decide that in the next 3 weeks, it's not going the way they want, and they want to get something back for some of these guys, there's some interesting names that then become available. Helsley in St. Louis, that's a team that I just have no idea what to make of, playing better than probably the front office could have predicted. What do you do if you're sitting there still sort of in contention, in the middle, late July kind of days there? It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't see why the Rays would sell at this point, just because they have a really good record. They're second place in the AL East. It'd have to be
I think
kind
they're
of
legit
like,
too. Like I'm kind of in on that team.
yeah, they continue to just draft awesome position players. It would have to be kind of like a win now move for both sides. So I don't know if the Dodgers would have to flip them one of their starters, because maybe the Rays seek starting pitching depth, and that's where we give them, I don't know, a Dustin May or something. But yeah, I just don't see the Rays as sellers right now. Another name that I think we can start to look at potentially as an option would be Joan Duran of the Twins. If they decide to sell, he'd be a nasty reliever out of the bullpen. But ultimately, I do think that's where the Dodgers will focus. Is they're going to add one reliever and they're going to add an outfield bat.
I think that is a pretty good guess. And, will they add a starter? Maybe they could. Could you see a reunion with someone like a Chris Martin, coming back? Could that, it's a guy who can kind of a righty who can kind of handle the seventh, eighth, something like that. I could see something like that happen. But yeah, I mean, right now, again, there's just not a ton of obvious selling teams. You're looking at the White Sox, the Athletics, the Nationals, and so maybe Kyle Finnegan's a guy that teams might be kind of interested in. Obviously Colorado, but who knows what they do? They just never seem to know kind of what they want to do anyway at this time of the year. And then sort of in Pittsburgh, but again, you're not looking at any sort of star players. And I think everyone was waiting. Is this the deadline for Vlad? And you have the Boston turmoil, and what's going to happen there? And then Devers gets traded. I don't think you're going to see anything quite like what you saw with Vlad obviously getting the extension and Devers going to San Francisco. So, but there's plenty of time still to see which of these teams kind of break away from 500 the wrong way and get interesting. Another team that's interesting here is the Angels, who have been hot lately, but how many times have we been here where you're saying they're, within 5 games of 500 at the deadline, and what are they going to do? And they don't really just totally kind of blow it up. So, but they have some guys, if they do decide to go that route, that could maybe get them something.
The Angels are going to be buyers. Just watch, because
you're probably right.
They think they're in it.
You're probably right.
Credit to Kikuchi and Anderson. They've actually been pretty solid as starters for the Angels. And yeah, they got a lot of guys.
Detmers somewhere else, and he's been good. I put Detmers in a different uniform, and I think that's a difference-making potential bullpen guy. So we'll see if they actually do it. They also have a guy named Kenley Jansen. That'd be interesting. But we'll see. We'll see which of these teams end up going. But yeah, the teams that are like clear sellers right now, there's just not a ton of star power, and that's why you're going to talk about Sandy Alcantara, because he's kind of the obvious guy. And you can look at Luis Robert Jr. I'm really curious what happens with that, considering he just hasn't been what he can be and what he has been in the past. What the White Sox sort of decide to do there, they don't have to do anything right now if they don't want to, with him specifically. So we'll wait to see. But yeah, definitely a bullpen guy. And then the Conforto situation, you kind of just wonder. You got to wait and see, I guess.
All right, last call for questions. That pretty much covers everything I have had on the agenda today. Rowan, was there anything around Major League Baseball or any surprise teams or players you wanted to quickly highlight real quick?
I did write about Cal Raleigh. Oh, am I frozen here? I feel like I just froze for you. There we go. I did write about Cal Raleigh, and I'm sure everyone has heard about this guy, what he's doing so far. If you haven't, it's been truly remarkable. We might be watching the best catching season we've ever seen in MLB history. A home run leader right now. He's been absolutely incredible for a Seattle team that's kind of just sort of hovering there. I mean, Houston's still the best team in the AL West right now, but that guy's been really, really, really special. So he's a guy I definitely have my eye on. And kind of going back to the trade deadline, and I didn't mention this team yet, but the Boston Red Sox, it's been a mess. Could you see Walker Buehler maybe back in a Dodgers uniform? Could you see Walker Buehler going somewhere? I wouldn't say it's totally out of the question. I think they're going to try to go win this year, but that's a name to watch. That's a guy to watch for sure.
I'm just so out on Walker Buehler now. I know he pitched great for the Dodgers in the playoffs, but he was pretty pedestrian in the regular season. And now he's been even worse this season, even another year farther removed from his second Tommy John surgery. And I just feel like, how much luck can one really get if you're pitching this bad in the regular season and expect it to carry over in October? I was watching his most recent outing against the Angels, and he just looked so bad. He had like 5 walks. He was giving up a ton of hits. He's just getting worse too. His last 7 games, he's got an 8.5 ERA and a 2 WHIP. It's been a rough go for a Dodgers legend, but
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things where I think it's just good that we've gone our separate ways.
Yeah, and I understand that point of view too. I'm curious. I know we're talking teams. I'm kind of curious now to see your players, but I'm curious to see what happens with the rest of this NL West now. Obviously, the Dodgers have kind of really separated themselves, but who's the second best team right now? I would probably say it's the Giants. I think, but I think it's a real question at this point. And so I'm interested to see what sort of happens with that. They've sort of fallen behind a little bit, but I don't know about the Padres' depth. And you think about the pitching situation with Arizona. We talked about how good this NL West was, but I think it's clear who the top team is. And I kind of think the Giants might be the second best of that sort of next in line.
Yeah, no, they've been playing some good ball, and adding Devers will ultimately help them. I think they're going to be aggressive this deadline. I don't know who they'll get, but I'm sure they're going to be in it. San Diego, AJ Preller loves a good trade deadline, so I'm sure he'll crack open a beer and get something crazy going too. All these teams are very determined to take over the Los Angeles Dodgers. I will say the team I'm most intrigued about coming into that week span near the deadline, it's got to be the Texas Rangers. This was a team I thought was going to be an AL West favorite, and now they're around 500. So depending on what they decide to do, they could have some interesting names potentially on the trade block. I don't know if they would even consider trading Jacob deGrom, but that would certainly be kind of a league-changing move if they were to deal him.
I just feel like I think Chris Young is not. I have a hard time thinking they actually sell. And you can probably talk yourself into, well, the offense can't be this bad. They're going to sort of figure it out. You've seen some better things from kind of Evan Carter. And then I'm a guy who grew up in the Dallas area, so I keep an eye on the Rangers as much as I can here, but it has been just abysmal offensively. And you just think, Semien kind of got hotter a little bit, but then they just go through another huge offensive lull. There's just a lot of really good starting pitching there. I could see Malley being a guy who maybe ends up getting moved. Maybe you could talk yourself into Eovaldi, who would maybe bring you back a lot. I know he's been banged up, but I don't know. We'll see with them. I have a hard time thinking they actually sell, though.
All right, Rowan, last question for you, since the first half is in the books. Who was your first half hero, position player, and pitcher for the Dodgers?
I got to go Andy Pages, position player. And we've talked about all the many reasons why that is. The fact that his all-around play has been what it's been has been just like truly remarkable. They've needed a guy middle bottom of the lineup who can kind of sustain this thing. And obviously you're not projecting the top 3 to go through any sort of low like you've seen this month. But to have that is just, absolutely huge. I think there are people calling for, why is this guy even up? And now you have a dude who's maybe heading to the All-Star game. So that would be my answer. Unfortunately, on the mound, there's not a ton of guys to choose from because it has not been very good pitching wise, but I'll go with Ben Kasparius because I don't think we knew kind of what that role would be for him. Obviously, he was thrust into a huge situation last postseason, but to kind of just do whatever this team needs them to do. There's been times where he's been a guy who needs to obviously pitch multiple innings. He can start. He can be your high leverage right-hander. He has just been huge. I mean, he's 3rd on the team in innings pitched right now. I think for me, with all the injuries that have kind of gone on, to have a sort of Swiss Army knife guy who you can rely on at a time when you've thrown more bullpen innings than any team in baseball, when it seems like there's a new guy getting brought up every day, he has brought some reliability to a very volatile pitching staff.
Yeah, I think those are the correct answers. Those are the 2 names I would have said. Just for quick honorable mention, Will Smith, we already talked about him being the clutchest player in baseball this season, 2nd most valuable player with a 3.1 FWAR, and has just been having his best season up to this point offensively. And behind the plate has just looked solid defensively too. Rowan Kavner, thank you so much for joining the Incline Dodgers podcast today. Make sure to follow him on his social media at Rowan Kavner. Covers Major League Baseball and does a hell of a good job for Fox Sports MLB. Any final thoughts, Rowan?
No, man. Thank you for having me. It's kind of remarkable with all the injuries. The Dodgers are where they are with the best record. I think they're tied with the Tigers right now. So, yeah, I can't see a world where it gets worse for them in that regard. So you're probably going to see an even hotter second half. So fun time for Dodger fans, and thank you for having me.
Appreciate everyone tuning in. Hit that like button. If you're listening on the audio feed, hit that subscribe button. Or if you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment and smash that subscribe button. Thanks, everyone.